do you have money in different accounts and you're trying to think, what would it all look like? And what would my plan look like? And how much money can I spend? And how much do I need to make on my investments? And how does that all come together? If so, today on this episode, we have Taylor Wolverton. She is our Director of Financial Planning and Tax Strategy, and she's going to walk through what a personalized planning meeting looks like. And you're going to get to see all the visuals on this episode. So make sure you tune in and watch all the way to the end.
We hope you've been enjoying all the episodes from the Secure Your Retirement podcast. If you'd like to keep learning and receiving these episodes, then hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications by hitting the bell so you receive alerts when each episode comes out. We've helped thousands of listeners get on the path to securing their retirement. Now it's your turn. Let's dive in.
So, Taylor, what we're talking about today is really trying to help people appreciate really what an onboarding process looks like with Peace of Mind Wealth Management. And I think one of the things that I find is one of the I tell people this particular meeting that you operate called the personalized planning meeting is probably one of the most eye-opening things that they're going to go through. And the reason why is because they're going to be able to see all the what ifs and to be able to see how their plan plays out. So, first of all, let me just say thank you for coming on and kind of sharing what this meeting looks like with us.
Yeah, of course.
So, just for everybody to give you context, if you're when you're understanding what this episode is about, is when a person becomes a client with our firm. And I would imagine there's some element of this maybe with some holistic planning firms, but our process is when a person says, I'd like to become a client, the very next meeting that they're going to have is going to be with Taylor. And Taylor is going to then really make sure that all the numbers are right in their financial plan, that we understand what their income plan is going to be. Do we have their accounts in there properly? Do we have their beneficial or those that might be, in their lives, whether it's children or their spouses, or how things are going to look in all those different areas. And the reason why I say it's the most eye-opening is that sometimes I think people think, I don't have enough money and I'm going to run out. I don't care how much money people have. They think they're going to run out. Another scenario is that people are worried about or thinking about is, can I afford to actually do that little extra thing that I was going to do? Or I want to buy a second house or whatever it might. I want to help my children. And in this tool that we give access to all of our clients to helps us figure all that out. So Taylor, if you don't mind, could you just kind of maybe set the stage here? When you go into a meeting for this personalized planning meeting, what's your goal as you walk into the meeting, and what are you trying to help the client with at this point?
Yeah, exactly. Part of the process of leading up to this point, we are gathering information about their situation, their income, their expenses, their account balances, where those accounts are, all of that stuff. We are putting that together. And so when they do decide to become a client, we want to confirm that all the information that we have is accurate. So that's what I walk through with them. We go through all of that information. If there are things that come up that we need to change or we need to add or remove, whatever we come across, then we do all of that in this meeting. Because this financial plan is what we come back to, one, in our financial planning strategy meetings that we have, and then also as we're talking through tax strategy and tax planning conversations, we use this as well. So it puts together all of that information and creates long-term projections so that when we're making recommendations around exactly those kinds of things, can I renovate my kitchen? Can I buy a house at the beach? Can I help my kids with their down payment on their house, or pay for my grandkids' college education, whatever it is that comes up? We can test some of those scenarios and be confident in our recommendations, knowing that our baseline is accurate.
All right, excellent. So let's do this. Just so our listeners, and I'm going to do a little setup here because I have asked Taylor to share her screen and to walk through what the financial planning process looks like. So if you're listening to this and you happen to be on a walk or you happen to be driving, don't worry about looking at the screen. But we do have the way for you to go see this if you wanted to go watch it, is you can do it on Spotify. Spotify allows for video for you to be able to see it, as well as YouTube. So if you're on our website, you can go right to the YouTube. If you are on Spotify, you can go there as well. Secure Your Retirement's on YouTube. And then if you go search Secure Your Retirement on Spotify, you'll be able to see all the screens. So she's going to talk a lot about what's on the screen. So if you're listening, we're going to verbalize it, but then you can go see it as well. So take us through, Taylor, kind of what you do very first thing when you start this meeting.
So the first thing that we start out with is what we have labeled here as our blueprint, which lays out all of the household assets and liabilities. And at this point, as they are becoming a client, most of the time we have accounts open where we have access to them and are going to be managing them. Sometimes there's still some transactions that are in progress if accounts needed to transfer between custodians or whatever that looks like. So we kind of talk through where their accounts are right now, if some things we're still waiting to gain access to, whatever. But we kind of walk through where all of the accounts are, what that looks like, the account balances that we have, both for accounts that are invested in the market, but then also just their personal checking, savings, money market, CDs. Maybe they are still employed and they have a 401k. We don't manage 401ks, so we want to make sure that the information we have about those accounts that are outside of our view, we still have an awareness of and know where they're at and what those balances are, because we want all of those details that are going to impact them today and over the long term. So what we're looking at on my screen now is an example. We have Bob and Sally Jones here. They have a lot of accounts. You can see as part of this process, we may even be consolidating some of these accounts where we can, but I will just walk them through like, okay, Bob, we have your Fidelity IRA here with this balance. We have your Fidelity Roth IRA here with this balance, and going through to confirm that what we have knowledge of is also what they have knowledge of. And like I said, if there are any accounts that are missing, I'll add those. Or if there's any that they go, oh, maybe that's a duplicate, or I've moved this here now, it's elsewhere, then we can make those edits as needed.
One thing I just want to say on this, just in case I'll describe it. What you've got here is you've got really like if you want to say it, a flow chart, and on the left is one person, and that's all the accounts that are in their names. So basically, IRAs, 401ks, anything like that has to be an individual name. It can't be joint. And on the right is the other person's accounts that are in their name, so you can see it very, very clearly. It's, to me, this is like a really good visual or roadmap. And then in the middle column is everything that is owned jointly. So you'll see things like bank accounts, or if there was a brokerage account that was a joint account, or the home, for example. The homes typically are joint, and so that's in this middle column. And so then what it does is, this is not about a one versus the other. This is just trying to help people visualize, oh, I got it now. Because sometimes people think an IRA or a 401k can be joint, and we have to explain like, nope, we can't do that. They have to be in your own names, and then you've got these joint accounts in the middle. So to me, this is a very, very good organized visual for people to have.
Yeah, and on the real estate properties as well, we'll go through like if some of those are being rented out, we'll talk through what the rental income is, or sometimes they already know they're planning to sell one or something like that. So we'll kind of talk through that timeline and what that looks like and what the expectations are for those properties, as well as the expenses attached to them for property tax, insurance. If there's a mortgage attached, we'll go through those details of what the mortgage balance is, what the payment is, what the interest rate is, again, so that can be included as part of their total expenses over the life of their plan.
All right, excellent. All right, so we've got this nice visual. You go through, you verify everything. What's your next step?
Yeah, kind of the conclusion of this page too that I always like to point out to people. At the very top of the page, it will show their net worth, which is combining the values of all of their savings and investment accounts and the values of the real estate properties that we have included in. And if there are any liabilities like a mortgage balance or an auto loan or a student loan, whatever, then it'll subtract out the values of those liabilities. So I always like to point out to people their net worth, and it is kind of fun because sometimes people are surprised by their own net worth. I even just had a meeting earlier this week where they said, oh, that's much higher than I thought, just adding together everything in my mind. So it's kind of cool to show people what they have. Sometimes it's all in all these different places that they don't even really realize. So
Yeah, very good.
be confidence boosting. The next thing that we'll go to is reviewing their income, both current and future sources of income. In this example, Bob and Sally, they are already in their early 70s, and so they are both already receiving Social Security benefits. Bob is also still working, so he also has a salary that we'll see on this page. But it could be, in other situations, maybe they have a pension, maybe they haven't started Social Security yet, so it's more of like a future source of income, or maybe even their pension is a future source of income that will start at retirement or some specific age or something like that. Maybe they have some self-employment income, or they're planning after they retire to move from full-time work to more of a self-employed situation where it's, more on their terms than what their primary career has been to that point. So we'll verify all the income, make sure that we know. This is also very important for future tax planning conversations, that we know where the income is, what the sources of income are, the timeline of that, especially self-employment income that has specific tax implications different than W-2 income from a salary. So I want to make sure I have a good understanding of what all of that looks like.
All right, very good. So we go through that, and then our next step
Yes.
is,
After we talk about income, the next natural step is to talk about savings contributions. This is primarily like if they're still contributing to their 401k through their employer plan, or if they are regularly making contributions to an IRA, or even if they know they have a surplus income every month that they're adding into a money market account or a CD or whatever that is, and maybe that's earmarked for their grandkids' education or whatever else they have coming along. So we like to talk through all of that to make sure we have those details accounted for as well. And then after we talk through our savings contributions, the final input stage that we'll go through is what we call our goals section here. And one thing we'll touch on specifically here, if they have not already retired, then we'll talk through what their expectation is for their timeline of when they do want to retire. So we know when their income is going to end, when their 401k contributions are going to end. That helps us think through the timeline of where income needs to come from and when, whether that's starting distributions and planning out what that retirement transition looks like.
hey, real quick on this one before we go off of this. I think that
Yeah.
I love this one because what'll occur is I'll ask somebody, I'll say, hey, what do you spend a year, traveling? And they'll say something like, we spend maybe 15, whatever, $20,000 a year on traveling, whatever the number is. That part doesn't matter. But then what we'll do is when we look at their plan, then I'll, let's say everything is just great. This is where I start talking people into spending some more money, which is what we talk a lot about because I say, look, if you want to, leave behind millions of dollars to your kids, that's okay. But if you'd like to take that extra vacation, what would that look like? And in goals, we're able to kind of come in and say, what if we're going to do our standard vacation is X, so let's call it whatever, $15,000-$20,000 a year. But I've got these couple of really big trips that I'm going to take. I really would like to do this big European trip, and that when the loan's going to cost me, whatever, I don't know people's budgets, but I'll just tell you things I hear, 35,000, 45,000, whatever that is, because we're going to do it right, we're going to do it nice. What would that do to my plan? The beautiful part of this is we can add that as a one-time goal. We could add that as a goal that's going to be for the next 3 years, and then it's going to go away because sometimes people want to travel just for like heavy period for 5-6 years, and then they're going to pull back. So, but then they're going to do their standard vacation. The other one could be they want to, you're going to buy another house, or you're going to help the kids, or whatever it could be. We can throw all kinds of goals in here to say, what is it? How will that make it look? And then at the end of this, we'll talk about it, but then you're able to play with the little toggles and say, I want to do more or less once we set these goals. So to me, goals allow somebody to visualize what is. So I want to redo the kitchen. I'm going to redo the kitchen in 3 years, and kitchens are expensive, and it's going to be $75,000 to $100,000 to redo the kitchen. What's that going to look like? And we can put all those goals in there so you're able to see everything on your plan. So to me, I love this one because it helps people kind of dream a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I agree. Yeah, on this example that we're looking at, they have some travel, and then we just have living expenses and some Medicare premiums is what this final tile represents. But exactly that, we can add in really anything that comes across your mind for what you want to see as part of your retirement. Could be charitable donations or college education, whatever else comes up. Car purchases even is something we talk about a decent amount. So we can
Hey,
see how
Hey,
that
real
affects
quick,
the long
Taylor,
term.
on
Yeah.
expenses, what we call sometimes people get a little confused on this one, I think. When for that category of retirement expenses, what typically is
Yeah.
it that we're asking people that we want in this particular goal?
Yeah, this one specifically, this is just kind of regular month to month living expenses in addition to the expenses we covered with the real estate properties like your property tax, your homeowner's insurance, your mortgage, that kind of stuff. That's on the previous blueprint page. This is like food, utilities, putting gas in your car, kind of just, everything else that you're spending, kind of whatever you're paying off on your credit card every month can be one way to look at it. So we have kind of that baseline monthly expense amount, and then we can add the higher, maybe one-time things like travel on top of that. So it's kind of easier to edit those higher price travel rather than just kind of lumping it all together into one monthly expense.
All right, very good. What's our next step?
Okay, so that's kind of all of our inputs that we talk through. So once we get through confirming all of those numbers, the next thing that we go to is a table that puts all of that information together. And that's going to show us not only this year, but like I said, projected far into the future of income, expenses, the travel we talked about, taxes, 401k contributions even in the future, if it's not part of the household's current plan, but will be, their required minimum distributions that will eventually begin. It maps out what we can anticipate. Now, we go through the end of the plan as the client's age 90. So we have an idea of certain changes that are taking place in the plan. If it is something like a kitchen renovation happening in 3 years, we'll see that taking place in this table. Or if it's a house sale that's going to happen at retirement, we'll see that in this table as well. So
Hey,
in
real
this
quick. Oh
example,
yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, just I wanted to get people to what you were just saying to visualize a little bit
Yeah,
is like, for example, when we say there's a column, and I know you're about to click on it, but I want people to kind of be able to visualize it is got what's called income flows. So I know whenever I've ever been on these meetings, sometimes people look at that and they'll go, "Wait a minute, what is that?" And just walk through what you're able to do. And we don't have to go through every column on this, but just so we can understand
yeah.
what we're able to see.
Yeah, so income inflows, this first column that we're looking at here, this is going to show any earned income. So again, this is Bob's salary that's continuing for the next couple of years. We'll see it cut off when we have Bob's retirement taking place and no more earned income beyond that point. We also will see Social Security in here. In our projections, we don't include cost of living adjustments on Social Security to be conservative. If there's a pension involved or other sources of income like that, self-employment, whatever, then all of that's included. This is more so you could say fixed sources of income. So not including distributions from accounts, not including dividends or interest or anything like that.
Also, by the way, just to go back to that one more time, Taylor.
Yeah.
So, just in case people are if you're watching this, go click on Social Security. And so, what I want people to know is if because you're looking at that and going, wait a minute, that looks like a humongous Social Security plan. It does combine both people. So, if it's a couple, it's going to on that first screen, it combines it. But then if you click on it, it opens it up so you can say, what's Bob's Social Security, and then what's Sally's Social Security, and then the total. So just so you know, everything we can open up and just show you what it is so that it makes sense.
Yeah, there's kind of a broad view in this table, and then you can drill down into more details from there as if you're confused what the column is showing. The next column we have is planned distributions. In Bob and Sally's situation, Bob is turning 73 this year, and so that means he will begin his required minimum distributions. If a client or a household is not at that age yet, then we'll scroll down as far as we need to on the table to show when that does begin, because that's something we like to keep an eye on and have an awareness of for knowing what their income will be in the future for tax planning purposes. since that's something that everyone with an IRA and or 401k will face when they're either 73 or 75. So in this situation, you can see those distributions about $130,000 beginning. Sally will turn 73 next year, and same kind of similar with the Social Security, we'll see both Bob's RMD and then Sally's RMD in addition to Bob's next year for that full combined amount. And RMDs do increase every year as your IRA balance and your age continues going up over time. Okay, if there is any other income like rental income, we would also see that in here. But the next column that we like to focus on is the expenses and the goals. So the expenses is like what we talked about, the living expenses, the mortgage if there is one, property tax, Medicare premiums, if they're paying life insurance premiums, anything like that, all of that will be found in this column here.
And one thing I want to just mention on this particular column, for the expenses part, that's what we call expenses, we are putting inflation on that. And so that way you know that you're going to be able to keep up. So we're running right now about 3% inflation is kind of, and if you look at the 100-year average, that's what that is. If a person says they want to see it higher, we can show it higher, but the reality is if we run it at 3, we're probably really good on average over the a 30-year retirement on that. And we actually run inflation as well on the goals as well, because we assume that if it's a goal and you want to do it, you're probably going to want to keep up and continue to do it at the same type of lifestyle. So let's go ahead and inflate the goal as well, like on travel, for example.
Yeah, exactly that. There's also a column in here for an estimate of federal and state tax that will be due on the income, so that's not left out. Planned saving, here's the next column we're looking at that would represent any 401k or IRA contributions or any additions to like a CD, things like that that I talked about. And then the final column on the table here, right now we're looking at it says spend unsaved cash flows. This represents, if it's a positive number, represents the surplus in income that we have. So for Bob and Sally, we have Bob's salary, both of their Social Security, Bob's RMDs. Their income is much higher than the expenses that we have included in this plan. So they're showing a surplus of about $140,000 a year. And that's fairly common. I do see that a decent amount. So I'll just ask like, okay, that's $11,000 to $12,000 a month that you're not spending. Do you feel like that's accumulating in your checking account? Does that seem accurate? If they say no, that's way too high, then maybe we'll go back and revisit expenses and add in some things that maybe we forgot before. Or if they're like, oh, that's too low, we're actually setting aside more than that. Again, we can have just the opposite conversation and adjust expenses to make sure that it is realistic on kind of both sides. And if it's a negative number here, which sometimes also happens, then that just represents a distribution that we're taking from investment accounts. It's not a bad thing at all. It's normal, especially when you're retired, to take distributions from your accounts. And that will lead us into kind of the next table, which shows how all of this impacts their investment account balances over time. Is there anything you wanted to add before we leave
No.
this?
So basically, this whole area that we're looking at now is all about income and income planning. And then the next one that we're going to take it to goes, now we want to see the impact of, are my assets going to survive or not? And I always tell people, if we look at the far right balance, which is our ending balance of the year, if that balance is holding or going up, we're doing fantastic. If it's running down too quickly, that could be a problem. Now, what can happen, just as people visualize this without looking at the screen, is I could have it so that I start off and I'm growing, and then maybe by the time I'm 80, 83, 84, it starts to, for the very first time, going negative a little bit. That's not a problem at all, because by the time we get to 90, we still have plenty of money left. And so we're not saying it doesn't ever turn, but if I'm, let's say 65 and it's turning on me by the time I'm 70, that's probably not going to be a positive event because I'm already starting to draw down my balance at an early age. I want that to maintain. So if we were to ever be in a scenario, let's say we had done all the income planning, right? Because we really haven't been studying this page yet, and we get to this page and we start to see a downturn, what does that mean? It means we're spending too much, right? Or we are, so there's lots of things that we can do to solve those problems. So one of those could be you work a little bit longer. One of those could be you work part-time. One of those could be you spend less. Um, all those things can solve those really quickly. So I might have somebody come in and they go, I want to retire at 62. And we go, great. All right, let's run the model. And you run the model and it starts to look a little risky. And so they go, well, okay, I just don't want to work for this corporate job that gives me stress for every day. So I'm just going to work part-time doing something, or I'm going to consult and I'm going to do it that way. And I'm going to do that for 5 years and then I'll retire. Well, absolutely. That makes a humongous difference. I mean, the one, if you're looking at the screen right now, is an easy one because they have good assets, they have good cash flow, and they live within that world. And so we're not going to have a problem with them running out of money. But I want you to understand what we're looking at in this. So everything we just looked at on the last screen comes to this screen and says, how are our balances working? So if you're looking at the screen, you're going to go, wow, these people have a good amount of money. They shouldn't have to worry. I will tell you, people with, and in this case, they have about 5 million, a little over five, almost $6 million total savings. They're just as worried about running out of money as somebody that has 500,000 because they want to make sure they're living within their means. They're not worried that they're going to just go into the poorhouse, but they want to make sure they're living within their means and they want to visualize it. And then there's other planning we can do. So anyway, I just want you to know what I think we want to get out of this particular page, and Taylor, whatever you think you like to share as well.
Yeah, yeah, this shows exactly that. Can our portfolio sustain the level of spending that we have in here? And sometimes that is exactly the conclusion we come to. No, what adjustments can we make that is reasonable? Yeah, there's going to be some trade-offs, but what are we willing to accept to make our money last the rest of our life? Or sometimes the opposite can happen, and we'll show in this example what we're looking at here as we scroll down the table. They're not spending more than what their portfolio is earning, which means their balances do continue increasing all the way through the end of this table, which, like I said, we show going through age 90. They have well over 10 million at that point in time. So sometimes when we get to this point, they also will say, oh, okay, I don't want to leave my kids $10 million. I'd rather spend more now. And we can go back and say, okay, what if we do travel more? Or some of those what if type of scenarios to meet their goals and help them feel comfortable with how their retirement plays out.
Yeah, one thing I want to say, I know we didn't on the verbal on this today really talk through this client's every detail as far as their accounts go. What one thing that if you are looking at the screen and you're like kind of looking at all their accounts and everything, I'll tell you one thing that I see on this particular client is that they don't spend very much, and that's why everything is just working the way it is that they have good assets. They've saved really well, but if you went back and looked at what they were spending, they're not spending that much compared to what they actually have. That's why on the screen, when you saw Taylor say they have all this extra cash flow. So if I were talking to this couple and I was having the conversation with them, I'm going to say, hey guys, are there some things that you really want to do that maybe are bucket list items that maybe you've not thought about? Go home and dream a little bit. Now, if your goal is to leave this money to your kids, great. But do you want to, and we can just start talking, do you want to do a big family vacation where you treat the family, I mean, and create a memory? Or do you have something that you want to do, whether it be a gifting or a charitable contribution? I mean, what we start to do now is that we're not trying to say that this is bad, but now let's say, hey, that from what you've got saved, you're not spending that much. I have many clients that have way less assets and spend a lot more money than what this client is spending in this example. So this is where we start to talk a little bit. And I will tell you, we're not going to walk out of this meeting and them going, I'm going to go spend a bunch of money, but it does help them to go home and start dreaming a little bit. And then they can come back and go, hey, we decided we are going to do something a little bit different, or we are going to try this, we're try to reach out and hit this goal that we had in our mind. But when you live decades working and saving, it's a big, big brain shift to get to a point where you're going to say, I'm going to start pulling this money out. And it's nerve wracking when you get into that scenario.
It is
Yeah.
hard for people to go from saving, saving, saving to spending, spending, spending. And it can be a scary transition. Luckily for our clients, we've been through many, many, many retirements. This is your first retirement, but it's not ours. So
Hey,
it's
just
kind of
out of
fun
curiosity,
to,
Taylor, when you go through this
yeah.
meeting with people and you get to the end of the meeting, how would you describe the majority of the time people's reaction to going through the plan and seeing all of what you just walked through? Like what kind of a sense or emotion do you think they have at the end of this?
Most of the time, if everything works out as we like to see it, I see their shoulders relax a little bit and they go, oh, okay, we're going to be fine. Or they'll ask me, do you think we're okay? Do you think we're okay? And I'll be like, yes, you're okay.
Yeah.
You're better than okay. It's all going to be okay.
Yeah. I just
And
like
we
to
use
talk about,
very conservative assumptions too. So I tell
right.
them that, like, it could be better than this situation. This is kind of like, no cost of living on Social Security, low rates of return. We're kind of planning for some of that. So yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully it just
What
helps them
rate
feel
of
more
return are we using?
confident.
Just so people kind of know, because
Oh yeah, I didn't say that number
we don't
specifically.
vary that from one to the other. We use a standard across the board when we're doing our planning.
Yeah, we usually use a rate of return around 5.5 to 6% annually going forward every single year.
Yeah. So I tell people, look, that's not our plan, is to only make 5.5 to 6%. What we're saying is if we run the plan and we earn 5.5 to 6% with all the investments and we do better, well, then that's great. All those numbers are going to be better. And if
Yeah.
we hit that goal, and when that's all we achieve, then you're fine as well. So we don't want to make this where it's got to be aggressive. We're just really trying our best to say, will the plan work under a conservative nature? And that's why we put all those things in there. So we could make every plan work. If I wanted to give a 9 or 10% rates of return and and low inflation and all that kind of stuff, I could do that. We're trying to say, no, let's stress test it a little bit, and that's how we stress test it. So I think that if you are listening to this and maybe you're obviously not a client yet, if you are a client and you're going, yep, I went through that whole process and I know exactly what my plan is and it felt good and blah, blah, blah. If you're not a client though, and you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, I would love to be able to see that and have that be me being able to understand my plan, then you can simply go to our website, which is pomwealth.net. And on any page, really, you can click on schedule a call or schedule a conversation. And the calendar will come up and you can schedule that right now. And we'll go through and start the process so you can see your individualized numbers. But thank you very much, Taylor. You do a lot in these meetings, and I know that it helps people. I always hear whenever I get to them, because I meet them after this meeting, and they go, man, Taylor just really did help me. And it was so like it is a big relief when they get through this meeting. And people do feel like they'll go, man, Taylor just really made me feel a lot better. So you get to impact people positively. So thank you very much.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
If you would like to find more information about Peace of Mind Wealth Management, we invite you to visit our website at pomwealth.net. If you go to the contact page and contact us, we'll send you a free copy of our book, The Peace of Mind Pathway. It lays out our process from beginning to end. Please visit our website.
For more retirement tips, check out these videos. Also, if you find them valuable, please subscribe to our YouTube channel and give us a like.